know. This is, you guys know more than anybody else who's joining us today. I know me had an opportunity to take your course, but essentially everybody else has never taken an aquatic therapy course. And I think while we go forward moving industry standards in surf therapy, aquatic therapy is sort of a no-brainer that our individuals should be exploring and considering in getting certified in. So I think that's just to like ease your minds. Like, this is really just, we'd love to hear about your program, what you do, why you do it. And I guess what, and me, you can speak to this since you're certified, you know, why did you add this to your repertoire as an OT? What made you want to go include this in your toolbox? So yeah, really looking forward to hearing about that.
And Carrie, just your video eventually. I don't know if you can turn it on.
And Meeg, do you want to just ask your questions? How do you want to do this?
I was thinking we can go through, you know, Chris, you want to do what you usually do and just break the ice once we let everybody in. And then I can go ahead and just introduce them. And then if we can start with the first question, I'll kind of go through. I can just kind of facilitate through the questions I have, but if it kind of naturally goes, I'll back off a little bit, but otherwise I have all the questions I can kind of facilitate through and delegate out who talks when. But I have them pulled up just in case as a backup, but I have a feeling everybody will have a fair amount of questions they want to ask. So I'll maybe keep it with, I'll start with their backgrounds.
So most importantly, Mary and Carrie, do you have questions? It's kind of thrown together, so I want to be here.
Oh, Carrie, you're muted.
All right, is that better? I might have
Yeah.
to shut my lights down.
Like,
Like I said in a couple, well, my last email is what is that behind me? Oh my, I don't know.
It looks cool, Carrie.
Okay, yeah, I don't really know how Zoom works real well. I don't know what I can offer because I'm more of a administrator. We don't, on a fitness and recreation side, we don't do therapy. We stay out of the therapy realm. My installations that provide surf do lessons. They don't, again, no therapy. So I'm here. I'm happy to help. I just don't know how I can support.
Well, I think, as you know, surf therapy is not, you know, it's not prescribable. There are no industry standards. The International Surf Therapy Organization, our program is trying to better practices. And so I think, as I just mentioned, having aquatic therapy in our surf therapy practitioners' wheelhouse and or just toolbox would be beneficial to them. So you definitely don't need to hone in on the therapeutic side. There's a lot of programs, physical therapists, occupational therapists that work on the physical side. It's not even about that. I think it's more talk about aquatic therapy and what aquatic therapy does, because I ideally imagine that people will be enticed to want to know more about aquatic therapy and how they can tie that in. It's sort of what Meeg decided to do when, as an OT, she really wanted to just add this to her toolbox.
And Carrie, I know when I originally had reached out to Ruth, she had mentioned that Aquatic Therapy Rehab Institute was merging with you guys. So you could also, if you were involved in any way with why your two organizations merged or just how you've collaborated, anything. I think that's originally why Ruth had included you. I could be wrong.
I'll speak to that. This is Mary.
Mary.
Excuse me, I just got out of the pool.
Good for
so
you.
I'm all wet. Uh, uh, I'm involved with both ATOI and AEA with the merger. It is still in process. So exactly where it stands, I don't know. By the end of 2022, it should be merged. I have never done surf therapy. Matter of fact, I think I replied that unless it's clear blue, see the bottom, calm cove, I'm probably not going in open water. I recommended Carrie because Carrie and I have worked very closely together with the Marines, and she is the safety expert. And I think anytime you're dealing with open water, surf safety is primary to any therapy that you do. So if Julia hops on, Julia has done work. She's very brave, but what I can offer, I don't know. I can give you my input, but I think mainly it's my first concern is always safety. Because if you go in, I don't know what open water you're talking about, but I live in Virginia, and Virginia Beach has very murky ocean water, and you cannot see the bottom. The bottom is always shifting, and it's very challenging to go into. I would not take a patient in there. So my idea is just trying to learn something about what you've been doing, what you want to do. I will say that I think the organization to succeed here in the United States has to be connected with another major aquatic organization. And if I'm not mistaken, AEA and ATOI will eventually become the World Aquatic Association, close to that. Otherwise, I think that's the best place, but Julia has done, surfing with amputees, and she's done swim with the dolphins. That's the most that we've done here in the United States. And otherwise, I'm here to learn and listen and see what's going on.
I think similar to what Chris was saying. So part of what I think most of our attendees want to hear is just, I don't think anyone knows much at all about aquatic therapy. So we can, if you don't mind, and if we could start with you guys just talking about what you do as someone that, especially you, Mary, that is certified in aquatic therapy. So just like super basics of what you might do on a day with a Marine, without even considering the ocean yet.
Body of water, right?
Water,
Right.
yeah.
Right, it's water.
You know what I mean?
Well,
if you start there, because I know that's what, when I had my meeting in November, all of them were just excited to hear about, is just as someone that practices aquatic therapy, kind of what you might do with just a typical patient that you might get, and just how you got involved with that. And I get what your hesitation is of how you see the path for surf therapy. I understand your questions there.
Well, I've been with aquatic therapy and aquatic exercise for probably 25 years. So the main ones I work with are spinal injuries and lower extremities. And I've also gotten into a lot of cognition. Know that when I I've gone from originally with amputees before any official contracts with the Army, to then the Army contracting with me to develop aquatic programs for wounded warriors. And this included all types of injuries. And from there, that program basically consisted of cardio, because we were trying to get them back so they could go on active duty, but most times injuries were too severe to ever go back to full active duty. Then somehow I got connected with Carrie and the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps said, you know, we sort of need this, but we need higher intensity because we have so many Marines that have overuse injuries. And so what we're doing, what we did, and Carrie can add in here, we really tried to see how hard we can work them. And, you know, at first it took Carrie to sell the program to the Marines, but then it was training that running them a couple times a day with heavy packs on their backs was causing overuse injuries. And by putting them and working them in the pool, it really helped. I also mentioned in my comments that we have the Intrepid Spirit Centers. I think there are 9 around the US now. And the main one is at Fort Sam Houston and San Antonio. And it has a, I don't know what to call it, except a surf box, you know, where it's waves that come down. And they use it mainly for amputees to, it's a short ride to help them maintain their balance. And so I can see working that way in, I know in Germany, I've lived in Germany for many years, we had wave pools, and working with a wave pool, it works with balance. And so as far as therapy goes, is putting that importance of everything starts with balance and core strength to working with the movement in open water. And I'm sort of rambling because
Well, no, I mean, Mary, I kind of want to save this because all of that is relevant to the people. And actually, you kind of sparked a little light in my head. It is so much better and I guess more relevant to this group to speak to the participants. And you're right. Many of them do work on balance. A lot of us will work on balance on the surfboard on land before we ever walk out into the ocean. Not everybody gets on a surfboard, but we definitely utilize the healing powers of water and the ocean and just being in the water, near the water and all that. So we would love for you to please talk about all of that, especially if you talk about the Wounded Warrior Battalion, because many of the programs work with military veterans, active duty and veterans, of course. But I think talking about your participants, maybe particular populations, and then what you're doing with them, that is so relevant to everybody. It doesn't need to be ocean versus pool. It's just, what are you doing in water with them? And of course, some of it we won't be able to translate into an ocean, but some of it might be really relevant and really interesting. And by the way, some programs take their participants to pools before they take them surfing, because a lot of them, especially kids, are so scared and can't swim. So they try to ease their minds in the pools. So you'll be able to give some insight just getting into water. So I love that. Talking about the participants you work with, what you do with them in the water, and that's what's relevant to everybody. So thank you so much for joining us today. Some people are joining, so I'm gonna start to let people in. And then Meeg, do you want Mary and Carrie to introduce themselves, or will you be introducing them? I
will just introduce them in the sense that I will say their names and then their like just respective organizations. And then I can kind of, whoever wants to take the lead and launch into the deeper background intro, we can kind of go that way. Is that
Well,
okay
maybe
with you?
before you speak, then Mary and Carrie, just quickly who you are, your title, what you do, and then you can
Sure.
lay into the questions.
And I think the really nice thing about this webinar, everyone is so excited to hear from Aquatic Therapy and the Aquatic Exercise Association, because it's kind of a two-way street. We want to hear how what you guys already know can make us better. And then maybe there's, questions you want to ask some of us that we could find a mutually beneficial way to spark each other's creativity and help both of our organizations grow. So I think based on what I heard from all of my participants last week, everybody kind of wants to hear what you have to say, and we might have some interesting things just to share with you guys too.
Love that. Morning, Lisa, who I haven't seen. Happy holidays.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good.
We have an iPhone.
I think we have some other people, and not everybody will show up on this. So, we can start when you want to start, and then people will show up or not show up because not everybody's on camera.
Well, thanks everyone for joining. For anyone that's not in my monthly group, I'm Meg from New Jersey. So today we have the pleasure and the privilege of talking to two wonderful individuals from the Aquatic Therapy Rehab Institute and the Aquatic Exercise Association. We have Mary Wykle and Kari, I think I'm saying it right, Hemund. So we just asked that both of them could briefly kind of give us a little bit of background about themselves.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Dr. Mary Wykle, and I am a senior instructor for both Aquatic Therapy, Rehab Institute, and Aquatic Exercise Association. And as most of you know, those two organizations are merging right now. And the goal has always been to take somebody that's been in aquatic therapy and move them into a community program. And so this is why there's a natural fit there. But I will also say that, and first of all, excuse me, I told the others I just got out of the pool, so I'm totally wet. I usually look better than this.
We usually all have surf hair. You never need to apologize for wet hair to a group of surfers.
But my concern is always safety, not only in the protocol that we do, but in making sure that we know how to assist someone that has a problem. I'll let Carrie Hammond introduce herself, but Carrie is, I know her background in safety, and from what we've done together over the years. And she's the one that really understands open water rescues because she has done them. And I think anytime we're working with open water or surf, we've got to have an expert on board that can at least provide a training program so that those doing surf therapy know what to look for and maybe know how to respond or have on staff.
Hello. So like Mary said, my name is Kari Hemund. I'm the Aquatics Program Manager for Headquarters Marine Corps. So we've got some ocean fronts that we oversee at our installations, and we have a bunch of pools that we have on our installation. Prior to being at headquarters for the last 11 years, I was the water safety director at Marine Corps Base Hawaii, and we have 2 beach fronts there that we guard, and we have an additional 2 that we do roves at. And prior to 3 years in Hawaii, I spent the first 5 years of my career with the Marine Corps in Iwakuni, Japan. And I gave up, I had a scuba locker and year-round swimming pools there. We didn't guard any open water at that location. But I've, like Mary said, I've done open water rescues, open water recoveries. I write our Marine Corps orders, which are kind of like state bathing codes or laws. And I do help oversee and implement standards and guidance for the 2, maybe 3 installations that we do guard and could start guarding the open water areas.
Oops, sorry. Thanks for the intros, guys. So last month, I asked some of my participants in the group just general questions. And one of the biggest themes was just how each of you came to be and came to find your respective organizations, just how your passion and your interest started to form. And then maybe just where your journey with ATRI and the Aquatic Exercise Association kind of has taken you guys.
Well, I've been involved in water for too many years, way too many. And basically, even though I give courses in aquatic therapy and rehab and in aquatic exercise, I am a swimmer. And so that's my concern, is that we really focus on the entire broad spectrum of aquatics. I will say that Carrie and I have been together in this endeavor for the past 11 years, because that's when we started, the Marines started, and she came to Quantico, and somehow we got connected. And watching and presenting with her and hearing about underwater recoveries that she's done, lets you know. And I can tell you that personally, unless you have really good balance and core strength and understand what's happening in open water, it can be a risky situation. So when we get into surf therapy, I do think that a lot of training in the pool is very important. Know that we have the scuba diving, we have, and this goes to the wounded warriors. They use a lot of scuba, they use a lot of kayaking. They're starting to use surfboarding, all kinds of activities that really help them recover and get back to doing more normal activities, because they can do in the pool or in water what many cannot do on land. So that's where we are with that right now. And what we have to think about is that, knowing that so many of our, not just warriors, we're talking patients, we're talking the long haulers of COVID and the depression, that if we can get them back into the pool, which then can move forward to the open surf, has so many benefits in the mind-body connection. Because I've done a lot with Pilates, yoga, I Chi, you name it. I'm just there and I've done it. That's because I'm an old dog.
Carrie, we would love to hear maybe how you found your way to the Aquatic Exercise Association, maybe a little more about how you and Mary came to start collaborating together.
So,
Since Mary gave you a great intro.
man, she's singing my praises. I need to keep her
She
around
is.
a little longer. So, yeah, I'm off mute. So, when I left Hawaii and took the position at headquarters, we started to do some looking and evaluating of what some of our strengths and weaknesses were at an enterprise level. And when we did that, we realized that back in 2011, a research study or a data collection was done, and it told us that within a 6-month period, almost 5,000 Marines were injured with musculoskeletal injuries that were non-combat related. And that 6 months cost us about $9 million. Now that 6 months was a continuous rotation. So it didn't stop. We didn't fix it. We didn't change it. We didn't eliminate those injuries. So as we have been drawing down our forces since 2011, we realized that that's a big number of 5,000 Marines on limited or light duty or getting out. We've put so much money into them, and then a $9 million medical bill that we're continuously paying. So in 6 months, we're paying an $18 million bill a year that just continued. And those were medical costs, non-combat related medical costs. With that, we kind of took a step back and said, well, we need to pump the brakes. We need to do something about this. Started doing some research, looking into what were we missing? What piece of the pie were we missing that continuously allowed our Marines to be a rotating door in the medical field within the white space? And one thing we felt and we realized that we weren't doing the best we could was providing an alternative to land-based physical fitness. So our Marines are humping with 70-pound packs. They are running 20, 40 miles in steel-toe boots, not great squishy running shoes or workout shoes. We've got steel-toed combat boots. So we realized that we were really breaking our own, and we weren't giving them an alternative to land-based fitness or land-based recovery. And then when we started digging down deeper, we kept finding that when our Marines would return to full duty, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months later, they would end up re-injuring themselves and going back to light duty. Land-based physical fitness, land-based recovery, or physical therapy, right back to land-based fitness. And we were running in a vicious circle. Started looking up what other options we were having. And this was all when our service members were coming back from the height of the war. And I found Dr. Wykle and what she had been doing on the Wounded Warrior side with the Army. Marines have a different mindset than a lot of other service members. So if I would have sold it to them as this is physical therapy in the water, they would have laughed me out of the room. And even selling it as an intense alternative to land PT, I still got quite a few laughs. So I was able to sell it and I did sell it as an exercise program, as a recovery program. So they weren't focused on this is physical therapy or this is aqua aerobics with the mindset that goes along with it. So it turned into the way we marketed and sold and the words we used and talked the program. Found Dr. Wykle, talked to her. We rolled it out to aquatics teams across the US. And it was a killer workout, but it wasn't quite to what we needed. Again, Dr. Wykle originally worked with the Wounded Warriors. So that was, that therapy side, that we really had to figure out how to massage and maneuver and keep the recovery part to it, but also be able to give them a good workout. We continued to put pieces together and try different things, and finally got a pretty substantial and quality program that used aquatic therapy, but not in the traditional sense of let's stretch, let's walk, let's roll our shoulders, let's get up on our toes and come back down. It was more of a blended of focusing on full range of motion and proper posture and balance in a high intensity workout. So we were able to mold both all of the different pieces to best help with their recovery, with their sustainability, with not causing more injury. As we continue to draw down our forces, we couldn't continue to have 5,000 Marines injured at a time. So that's kind of where Mary and I first started building and coming, and now I still have questions and I reach out and I'm like, hey, what do I do about this? Or she'll reach out and say, well, I need to know about this. And we just kind of work hand in hand.
That was a really great story. I mean, that was really interesting to hear. And it sparked another question. I was just thinking, you kind of talked already about getting the buy-in from the Marines, but did you also need to get buy-in from more of like the Marines doctors? Because I know that's a big topic with surf therapy, is just getting buy-in from people besides the participants themselves. So does that question make sense? And
it does. And we stayed away from the medical side. We stayed, when Mary and I worked through the process and the development, we did have a DPD that worked with us to make sure that we didn't do anything stupid. And she kind of kept us in line, but we didn't work through our medical community. We did this more on the come and play and get a good workout and have a recovery day. Have a day to do something fun. Have a day where it's too hot to go run outside. Have a day to get outside of the weight room. So we looked at it more as an alternative to fitness, even though we incorporated different aspects of recovery. I don't use the word therapy because I am not a physical therapist. I am a pool lady. So I stay far away from the word therapy and rehabilitation. We use the word recovery. And so I guess we didn't use our medical community. However, at the different installations, some of the medical community, some of the OPs and PTs that were in the clinics did get wind and did support what we were doing. But it was just word of mouth and conversation and training them in what we were doing and giving them outlining kind of what we developed.
that's super smart. That makes a lot of sense.
I think selling to the medical community, to the doctors, is the hardest thing that you have to do. Even with ATRI, we are still mainly convincing therapists that this is where they need to take patients. And the availability of therapy pools is very limited. I will say that, yes, we did add, Carrie and I added Terry Mitchell to our team in development. And Terry was our therapist. And she quickly realized, and this is something I had not picked up on, that Marines could move forward and backwards, but they could not move diagonally. And so we had to add, other components into the program. But the thing was that we had to make it safe, but as strenuous as possible. I'm trying to keep my mouth clean today. But we had the Mary, Carrie, and Terry team that did training at every Marine Corps base in the world. So it was intense. And I will say that every night after a day of training, we would be together saying, what can we do better? And as we moved forward and we've seen the field of aquatics itself move forward, I will say that I did drag Carrie to the main AEA conference with me one year. I'm not sure she'd ever go back, but because she's a pool lady, and it's something that I think there are so many options that the field is changing so rapidly that we have to find ways to stay up with it. SUP, stand-up paddleboarding, is so popular right now. But before I put them in open water, I want them in a pool. So this is where we start to combine what can we do safely before we put them out where the water might be moving in a different way. The same goes with kayaking. There's just so many things that we have to look at that, and to sell it to the medical community, you're not going to sell it to them unless that doctor happens to be a swimmer or somebody that has learned about the water. You try and sell it to someone, a doctor that's not a swimmer, and he's not going to buy into the program. They believe in land. Well, most of them do not know anything beyond, okay, I'm assigning you to physical therapy. And then you've got to educate the physical therapists. And when I was doing the Army program, we did have one session where we invited the sports medicine residents to come in and go through the program. And the problem was we started off with deep water running. And that is where you establish your own step count. And you're getting your heart rate up into the max training rate. And we used heart rate monitors, so we knew where they were. But when we put the doctors in, it became a competition. And you don't want this to be a competition. You want it to be a recovery process. But they worked so hard trying to outdo each other that when we did the lecture, they all fell asleep on us. So did they ever assign anybody? But we had to train the patients that when they saw the doctor, that they requested to be sent to aquatic therapy and not just physical therapy on land. So it needs to be a combo of both, but we've got to look at better ways to reach the medical community, but we have to do this through therapy first.
Love that. That sparked another question. So Chris mentioned it to you and Carrie earlier. I actually took the Aquatic Therapy Rehab Institute courses. I went to DC. It was like, I think the last conference they had before COVID in 2020. And then I took the test, got certified. And then a week later, COVID lockdown happened. So I never actually do much. But I heard about you guys just because it was something I'd always wanted to do. I'd always loved the water. I'm a surfer, of course. And I'm an OT, so I knew to look for it. But what are most of my other colleagues that I know of have never heard of ATRI unless it's something they've always wanted to do like me. So what are some other ways like ATRI and the AEA can, or currently try to reach more of like the therapists. Cause like I said, I know that I was really excited about it, but I think like you were saying, it's kind of both, like reaching out to the medical community and just getting buy-in from the participants. But I think part of the difficulty is I don't think everyone knows how to find you unless they're really looking for it. That makes sense.
I agree with that completely. I think that's one reason that AEA and ATRI are combining. It's a natural fit. And by combining is the way that both organizations have a chance to survive. I will say that physical therapy does have an aquatic section. And so, but that's a very small piece of the main Physical Therapy Association. And they've worked very hard. I know some of our therapists have worked very hard with APTA to get them to know more about being certified. What I have found is that so many therapists, especially, I shouldn't say this, but physical therapists do not understand you cannot take land therapy and just transition it to the pool. And they do that without training. And I know of one of our therapy clinics here has, when they moved into the new building, they talked about building a therapy pool or a SwimX. And instead of that, they got a HydroWorks treadmill. They specialize in spinal injuries. Personally, my opinion is that a person that is recovering from a spinal injury, many of them, unless they are a runner, the last thing they want to do is run. And that HydroWorks treadmill underwater mainly does that. And so I think if I had the solution, I would be a rich person right now, but I don't have the solution. But I think what is happening with the merger of ATRI and AEA is that we're going to get more recognition of the importance of both areas and how they support, how they combine. And when you go from therapy, how do you move into a community program? Because that's where it is, because you're only allowed a limited number of therapy sessions before you are on your own. So we've got to look at that. And if I had that magic bullet, hey, you know, it would be great. But I think many of us are still searching for how do we reach the general population. I know at my pool, we don't really use locker rooms yet, but we're allowed to walk through them now. But so many of them sort of corner me and say, okay, I have this issue. What should I do? Okay. Do they listen? No. But that's because there's not enough publicity or recognition within the community to know that this is an option. And ATRI will be in DC in February and will be in Chicago in April. The IAFC, which is the International AEA, will be in Daytona Beach the first week of May. and ATRI will be in Sanibel, Florida, the end of June. And after that, everything is as one group. It's taking over a year to merge them. But I think this is the way we get the word out. And it's finding, it's education. Everything comes back to education, and then that safety component, that if you don't have those in place, you're not going to be successful. So what's my answer? I don't know. I wish I knew.
I think you touched on this earlier too. Just alone finding access to pools, let alone pools that are fit for doing aquatic therapy. I remember learning that in one of the ATRI courses. But I do think I know with surf therapy, all of us have been constantly talking about safety, safety, safety. Obviously, with having moving water, and as you were saying before, just an ocean floor that changes, being open to like the weather elements. But the great part of using the ocean is it's everywhere. So it down the road, as surf therapy really hones in its therapeutic aspects and its safety aspects, it does open up more physical space for some of the aquatic therapy concepts to be used, if that kind of makes sense. But I think that will take maybe a little longer to be able to first get more people that are certified in aquatic therapy and then figure out a way to use some of that into the ocean and what we're doing with surf therapy.
How do you see working the International Surf Therapy Organization into what we're doing in the United States?
Chris, if you want to help me out with this one too.
Well,
Definitely
you know, that's really why I was so interested in this topic today. We are international, but we're based here in California. So, but surf therapy programs are happening on 6 continents. And, you know, we are seeing practices evolve and certainly have extremely progressed, I guess is the right word, over the past 4 years since we came into inception. We've tripled the research on surf therapy. So we're really trying to promote evidence-based, inclusive, safe surf therapy. And we knew the way to do it was by bringing the sector together and having these conversations. And some of it, it's so interesting to me because I do feel like in a lot of ways where we would like surf therapy and are working towards surf therapy to be universally accessible through prescription, we haven't really we're not really the first ones to invent that wheel, right? Because there are alternative methodologies out there to traditional treatment that is seeing a psychologist or a psychoanalyst or a marriage family therapist within occupational therapy, rec therapy, music therapy, art therapy, hippotherapy, aquatic therapy. These are all alternative methodologies. And so surf therapy, again, where the research is still in its infancy, it has been around for, you know, hundreds of years where people are finding the healing powers of being in the ocean and or just water. I want to kind of reiterate water because we're talking about aquatic therapy. You know, reading Blue Mind by Wallace J. Nichols, who has told us all being in and around, near, on, or under any body of water, including your own shower, makes us happier and healthier. So we're really taking those principles. And that's why this is so interesting, because you are many, many decades ahead of us. We don't have credentialed courses in surf therapy. And that is something that we're working on. And I think aquatic therapy, I think it should overlap and be a part of getting certified.
Now, I can say that research is absolutely essential for moving forward. And a couple thoughts, several thoughts there. First of all, we have Dr. Bruce Becker, who is an expert in this area and is primarily our research guru. We also have, I can't think of his last name right now, Stacy, that's down in Phoenix. That's doing a lot, but they're talking international. What has happened with the lockdown now? I don't know what's happening to the organization, but it's ICEBAT. It's the International something on aquatic therapy. This is where presentations are made. The meetings, the yearly meeting was in a different country every year. And it covered all different topics. And we've got Ben in Finland. We've got Johan Lambeck doing Badra. Julia, that I was hoping would be on, does Badra. I can definitely see Badra in the ocean because of the movement of the water. But it is very calming, and I can see that. But I have not. I need to contact Stacy again and see what's happening with this organization. But you can, submit a presentation, and if you present, you get recognition worldwide. And it's getting this that's going to be key to really moving forward. But that research piece is you go forward and say, this is our research. And, I think living here in the DC area, you can go out in the tidal basin and you see people doing stand-up paddleboarding. You see it in the pools. You see yoga and all types of activities on your paddle boards in the pool. And I know the Marines have done this because I'll tell on Carrie. She tried this. She and Terry tried it when we were at 29 Palms. And I think she really enjoyed it. But these, we've got to get research-based evidence so that we can take it forward and say, this is what happens when we put somebody in this type of surf. You look at there was just an article in the Washington Post this morning on the depression that we're seeing, and putting them into the pool and putting them into a wave like is very calming. I just did a video segment before I swam this morning on stress and depression. That I'm working with AEA and ATRI in a combo, and I'm doing the therapy side of it, and somebody else is doing the community side of it. But this is where we have to look at getting those benefits of not only being in a pool. And I will say Blue Mind is a wonderful book. There's another book out by Vanderkirk, The Body Keeps Score, that is wonderful, working with PTSD, because that's what we're seeing coming out of the pandemic. And I'd like to say we are coming out, I'm not sure. Yes. We have to find ways to reach these people to help them find that place of calmness within their bodies. And this is the mind-body connection. And the mind-body connection really comes through use of water. And yeah, Blue Mind is one of my favorite books. And he does have another one out I haven't read yet. But I think staying with the idea of getting some research projects going is going to be key. And then looking to almost 2023 is when you're going to be able to have an impact in these organizations, because conferences are basically scheduled and contracted through 2022. You do things so far in advance. But it's a thing that when they have a symposium, you spend the money to have a booth and you let people learn. People need to hear about the organization. Then the next question is going to be, well, what research do you have to back it up on? The therapist is going to ask you, what's the research? The aquatic instructor is going to say, how do I do it? So you've got two different mindsets that you have to think about. And so that's the main thing I have to offer, is that, I'm hesitant to go in open water unless it's a calm blue water where I can see the bottom and there aren't a lot of waves. Being a swimmer, I can tell you the last time I went in the Atlantic Ocean at Virginia Beach, the bottom sand was moving so much, it knocked both my husband and I down, and we floundered crawling back to the shore. You'd think that with my background, it should be no problem, but it was. And so this is why that safety piece is so essential. And we were in a non-lifeguarded area. So, we could have been in big trouble. And so you do this. You look on cruise ships at their pools. If the water is at all rough, it's like being in open water because the water is rolling. So know that we need to think of all the different ways that we can have an input into different areas. And I think you just had a meeting in Cornwall that I have relatives that came from there. I would love to have been there.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's on my bucket list. But, until Ruth gave you my name, I had not heard of this organization.
Mm.
And so this is why we have to find ways. I know IFC in the beginning of May will have exhibitors. And this is where you can have your first notice of this is what we do. And I can tell you that you'll get a lot of attention because a lot of people love going to the beach. So what can you do there? It maybe does not need a therapy focus at that time. It's what can you go to the beach? Why is it important to go in that water? But how is it important to be safe when you go in that water?
Yeah, you've touched on many parts of the individual organizations. We started with 8 surf therapy programs we were working closely with in 2017. We were founded in Cape Town, South Africa, and we're working with nearly 100 different programs out, of course, on 6 continents around the globe. And I imagine there's another 100 that we might not necessarily be working with, but safety is at the forefront, which is why we are looking we are going to start a pilot study next year and an IRB approved study surveying the practitioners who are actually delivering surf therapy out there. But we do have the first ever randomized controlled trial. It had $1 million grant from the Navy, and that is actually in conclusion. And we're excited to see the results of that come out hopefully mid next year. That was with the Navy in San Diego. And I think we have now 3 or 4, possibly 5 other randomized controlled trials, knowing that that's the gold standard in new treatment, or I guess efficacy of new treatment. But the evidence is building and building and building. And we actually facilitated the first ever academic journal last year dedicated to surf therapy research. So, it's starting, but again, we are so knowing that surf therapy has been around since the 80s. And what I mean by that is maybe not by definition, but more, there were individuals taking out people who are blind or people who use wheelchairs on land, and they were safely getting them on surfboards, water safety,
Right.
surf instructors. So the idea of the therapeutic benefits of rolling with the waves, being on the waves, or just even the healing powers of being in water, that was happening in the 80s. But again, the research would not support that, in the sense of I think there's maybe, I want to say 40 papers out there, which that is, as you know, that is not yet enough to prove efficacy in surf therapy. But you're right, we're working with all of, I guess, the best of the best in surf therapy, because we are a new segment to the mental health support. And you're absolutely right, COVID only highlighted the need for mental health support in its rarest form. And I think a lot of the individuals that we work with, anywhere from, of course, veterans, first responders, Syrian refugees, sex trafficking survivors, men and women recently released from prison, farmers. I did not know the suicidal tendencies in farming was so great. There are programs all around the world serving the most underserved populations. But it's a matter of, okay, what are we doing? Who and how are we keeping everybody safe? Because again, same as you, our number one priority is safety. So yeah,
Right.
I'm so grateful for what you guys do.
And talking about the Navy, if you've got new research about to go on, you might be able to get the Marines connected with that. I don't know if Kari is still on or not, but the Marine Corps belongs to the Navy.
Yes. It's it's happening down on the Navy base attached to the Camp Pendleton area.
Okay, yes. And Kari does an awful lot with that's one of the main beaches is there at Camp Pendleton.
Yes,
So,
I've worked there extensively with the Wounded Warrior Battalion.
Right.
And surfing. Mm-hmm.
So it might be a way to draw her in, to give her more credentials as she moves forward. She's been with the Marines so long, and she's done stuff in her master's thesis. I know she was looking at the suicide rates and all with firefighters and EMTs and police. Many people don't know that even before the pandemic, we had an average of 1 doctor commit suicide every day. So, and we're still having at least 22 service members and veterans commit suicide a day. And that rate is only going up. And so many of the long haulers, as we're talking about those right now, I see the water as the cure-all. And so anytime that we can get involved in research, and if we can have a place to help with this research, that would be a wonderful opportunity.
I'll have to, I really love that idea. And I think, because your program or your organization is doing this, there is a lot of power in working together. And there's
Right.
much more like validity in the work. And actually it'd be interesting to tie those two in together, because you probably already know this, the hardest part about research is getting control groups. And so randomized controlled trials, again, being the gold standard, but there are so few out there because of how hard it is to manage that. And frankly, needing the money to support it, which is really a travesty, because when you think about the drugs we take, of course, prescription drugs we take, the trillions of dollars that goes in to proving the efficacy of those pills, versus we have this solution, and in our minds, very natural solution, right? Get to nature, just get to
Right.
nature. Some people can't
Right.
get to this ocean. But if you can't, you probably can get to a pool. And what we're really proving is that if you can't get to a pool, you can probably climb a mountain then. Like, nature is really having a moment, right? When everybody was told to stay inside, even
Right.
the kids who are addicted to playing games on TV wanted to go outside. So nature is really having a moment. I really love that, Mary. You've got me thinking to see what research is happening or what research is trying to develop out there. And even maybe possibly it would be interesting to possibly have you tie in with our pilot study that we're starting, because we're actually surveying the practitioners, not the participants, because we think it's really important to talk to the people who are delivering the services that are yielding therapeutic benefits. And in that, we intend our outcome to be an accredited course, because there is no accredited course in surf
Right.
therapy. So there might be a tie in there, but anyway, you've got my brain thinking. So thank you for that. And Mary, I mean, we're pretty much out of time.
Okay.
You probably want to come back on here, but I just want to quickly say, you are a gem, my friend.
Oh.
And thank you so much. And Carrie, I don't know if Carrie's still on here, but thank you so much for coming on. And Meg, I'll let you wrap this up. Carrie, thank you. And I want to hear more and talk to you more about all the work with the Wounded Warrior Battalion. That's sort of my wheelhouse with surf therapy. That's where I started at Camp Pendleton. And yeah, we'll have to stay connected to you. But both of you, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Mary, you also got my wheels turning. Maybe you're gonna have to let me know. I'll email you when you're going to some of the different conferences, because I like the idea of maybe us trying to have a booth at one or multiple, or just trying to get some of our surf therapy practitioners to attend some of the different conferences you mentioned. So maybe you'll see maybe Chris and myself at one of them in the near future.
We've spoken at a couple of conferences, a couple of different research conferences, actually. One was in Noosa, Australia, which was, you didn't have to twist my arm to go to Noosa, Australia.
No.
It's called the Sunshine Coast for a reason. It's the most beautiful place. But that was in 2018. And then in 2019, we were invited to Community Psychology and Research and Action Conference in Chicago. So surf therapy, I mean, we have had these symposiums, but only two. And obviously that was 2019. And then of course the whole world
Right.
stopped. So we of course are having annual conferences, probably 50-50. Actually, I shouldn't say that. This year was our 5th conference. I would say 70% of them have been about the research. In 2019, probably 90% was about the research, because again, for us, it's all still new. So the research is really what's interesting. But Wallace J. Nichols, of course, the author of Blue Mind, was our
Right.
keynote speaker in 2019. And it's fascinating. And it makes a lot of sense for us to send in a proposal to be able to join one of your conferences, because again, our mantra is go far, go together, because it's an African proverb, and it's only, of course, the back half of it, which of course the first part is, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And this idea that we should all be working together because we are utilizing the same elements. We're using water to help heal people's mind, body, and soul. And so it makes a lot of sense. So yes, me, let's stay on top of these conferences and let's go out and join one. And then I can see
Okay.
Carrie and Mary.
Okay,
So I
thank
have-
you.
One closing thought for you as you guys were talking that I was thinking, and one of the challenges that I see, and I don't know how you're addressing it because I am, like Mary, not familiar with your organization or what you do, but one of the biggest things is when we ask people to come to water, we are asking them to get into an environment that can kill them.
Mhm.
And that doesn't happen when we ask them to go to PT on land, right? Like they live on land, typically being on land won't kill you. So we have continued when we build our programs and when we talk to our senior leaders and our commanders is talking to them of and recognizing and calling it out. Yes, we are asking you to get into an environment that can kill you. We are also asking you to trust us, and we are asking you to give it a whirl for us to be able to keep you safe and make your life better. So we call that out very openly and very upfront, because that tends to be what processes in the back of people's mind. And especially when you talk military, right? We ask them to go in hazardous environments all the time. So why are we asking them to go into another hazardous environment that is not necessarily required? So using all of that research and tying it together and saying, yes, we understand what we're asking of you, but here are the benefits that we perceive that you're going to get, and calling it out and making it known that we have addressed these issues and we have minimized the hazards and we have accepted the risk, and kind of we want you to take our hand and go with us. The other thing that we've run into is we offer surf lessons. Again, not on the therapy side, we just offer surf lessons. We teach people how to surf. One thing we don't have that we haven't found out there is a surf instructor certification.
Yeah, there
So-
is a surf instructor certification through ISA. Yeah.
well, we haven't found that. We just must not have
But
looked
it's
in there.
just surf instructing. Like you're right. It's not therapeutic. It is simply how to keep the individual safe. And not to cut you off there, but I really love that you brought this up. One of our board members has actually just graduated and has become the first ever Ph.D. student in surf therapy. So we now have a surf therapy doctor, and his entire 3-year qualitative research was done. And what came out of it, I mean, in a nutshell, is creating safe spaces. And surf therapy programs will tell you surfing is just sort of the magic word to get people to come down. But the truth is, what we're really doing is creating safe spaces and communities for people to be able to open up and talk. And a lot of our individual programs, founders of programs who've been running for 15 years will tell you it's not surfing. It's building that safe space and bringing people together in a place where they all look the same, whether it's a child with autism or a veteran or a person who's disabled, whatever it is, they all look the same on the beach and they all look the same on a surfboard. And it's really about creating that safe space more than it's about, like, don't tell anybody, but it's not about the surfing. So yeah, the entire qualitative research he did over 3 years was surf therapy programs are creating safe spaces in a way that traditional treatment doesn't necessarily do, because of course you have your participants, you have your volunteers, you have, stakeholders on the beach. And again, if nothing else, we're utilizing the ocean as our office or our playground. And there was a really great, at our conference in Cornwall last month, already October, it's already December. I don't know where this year's gone, but Dr. Helen Dodd did a randomized control trial about play and how kids and adults don't play enough. And the definition of play is what kids do when they're not told what to do. And this whole idea about how actually there's a sense of so much play in your pools and play on the beach and play even in open water. So I love that tie-in, and you're absolutely right. It's about creating safe spaces, because if you don't have that trust, then you essentially could be triggering them again. And that would be the worst case scenario. Like Carrie, one time, I don't know what, one of our participants actually at Camp Pendleton brought a drone. And of course, we would never have allowed that. We didn't even realize, like all of a sudden he like puts up this drone and I'm like, no, not around our Wounded Warrior Battalion, struggling with the, onset PTSD or any other, unfortunately, mental illness. Is like, you cannot have a drone in the air, because the worst thing we could do is trigger them like that. That's a failure for sure. So Carrie, thank you for bringing that up. I love that.
It's funny you said you make it your office. The aquatics director at Camp Pendleton, him and I always joke about going on board meetings.
Yeah.
And just getting done with the board meeting. So I'm a surfer. I started surfing when I was in Hawaii. I'm not a great surfer by any means. I was surfing. I prefer, those littler 1 to 2 foot faces, but I learned in 6 to 8 foot faces. But I love surfing, and other, different than Mary, put me in rolling water and I'm as happy as a clam. So I think it's great. There is a lot of uphill battles that I feel for you guys that, kind of is just around aquatics in general. I've heard that you talk, and what you're saying are some of the same barriers that, whether it's aquatics fitness or aquatics therapy or lap swimming or surfing or stand-up paddle, that there's all of those barriers are the same. So it's rough.
It is fine. Between randomized controlled trials and funding, our surf therapy programs deliver their services for free. That might not be sustainable for the forever. So yes, we're definitely an uphill battle, but I have to tell you, it's so exciting to be alive, to say that, kids being born today might never know a world without surf therapy as a prescribable alternative treatment. And the fact that universities are now acknowledging it. I mean, we have a doctor of surf therapy. That's pretty cool. So, everything started somewhere, right? I mean, psychology came around in the 1800s. Occupational therapy came around early 1900s. I mean, community psychology didn't come around till 1965. I mean, that's been in our lifetime. So it's exciting. It's exciting to see aquatic therapy become validated, and ideally surf therapy become validated. Again, our ancestors will tell you they've been utilizing nature their entire lives for healing. I mean, everything in nature can heal us if we protect it. And that's a big component to surf therapy, is protecting our office. And yes, our board meetings. Why do you think I do this? So I can have board meetings every day. But anyway, both of you, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And one last thing, it's very hard working with wounded warriors, but if you're at Camp Pendleton, some way you need to be able to let Carrie know what's going on, since she oversees the ocean there. And
Carrie, my organization that I came from, Jimmy Miller Memorial Foundation, runs the surf therapy program at Camp Pendleton with the Wounded Warrior Battalion. So I would love to connect you with them and have you come out and see what they're doing. It's incredible. And I know the 3 years that I was running the sessions on the beach, I would have somebody almost monthly tell me that they were planning their suicide. And then now that they've discovered surfing, they really just want to go plan their next surf. And to us, that is such a signal of creating hope for the future, because if you're no longer planning your suicide, then you have now created hope for their future. So Carrie, I'll make sure to put you in touch with them. They would love to have you down there.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thanks
guys
again,
so
everyone.
much.
Meeg,
Thank you.
have a great day.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.